Cities are under extreme pressure with rapid urbanization and the increasing needs of a growing population. It is more than clear to all delegates here at the second Eco-Mobility World Festival that local governments need to take decisions that are relevant to a large variety of inhabitants and have a long-term impact. There's some very exciting discussions taking place here at the Eco-Mobility World Festival's dialogue sessions. There are delegates present here from different parts of the world. They have the opportunity to present their urban plans, to share ideas and to talk about finding solutions when it comes to developing integrated transport systems that embraces and supports the realization of eco-mobility goals. Today we heard from the city of San Francisco, the city of London and the city of Kampala.
When I started with Transport for London, when we first had a mayor in London in 2000, it was very different. We were totally a car-dominated city. They were saying that traffic moved slower than in Victorian times when it was horses and carts. And it was awful to walk on the pavements. You know, when you wanted to get anywhere, you had to step out in the street to get around obstacles. And so we said, right, we've got to change this completely. So congestion charging helped to reduce the traffic impacts in the centre of the city, but we gave over street space to bus priority, so bus-only lanes, because the problem was nobody was using the buses because you never knew how long that bus journey was going to take. It might take 20 minutes or it might take an hour and a half because you didn't know what traffic jam you're going to. Now the bus journeys are predictable, so that was a very important aspect. Then we started taking away all the railings that were supposed to protect people from the cars. We got rid of them, and surprisingly the people don't actually step out into the street in front of cars all the time, but actually act sensibly. And so that dialogue between people and vehicles is much better when you don't have the protection, that actually then they're each looking out for each other. So we did a lot of that. We widened pavements so people actually had more space to walk. We've been a bit slow on cycling, and as a cyclist, I'm a bit sort of frustrated about that. I've cycled in London all my life, but you know, it's not a great experience yet. But I hope it's going to get better, and the current mayor is putting in some segregated cycle lanes finally. So it's taken 15 years even for those to appear. Those are the first segregated ones. You know, we're way behind Europe when it comes to sort of cycling, but we've done a lot for public space, and we've got rid of traffic gyratories that cut off Trafalgar Square, and we've created these. And the amazing thing is when you get rid of the traffic and make it easy to get to them, the people just flood in, and so these spaces now are absolutely full of people. People go there to meet or just to be there, to hang out, and we have festivals happening in Trafalgar Square all the time. So that, you know, the things have changed, but it's been slowly. So 15 years, you might think is quick, or you might think it's quite slow. I mean, we're only just beginning to get there.
In the city of San Francisco, to support eco-mobility goals, it was imperative to get all role players involved. That is government, advocacy groups and citizens.
We don't believe in forcing people to do anything. People have choices, and that's what we focused on. We focused on creating a system of choices so that these choices were equaled and as a good of value as the proposition of driving by yourself in your own car, which frankly doesn't have very good value because it's very expensive, parking is impossible, and it's it makes you unfit. So people already knew that they didn't like driving anyway in the city, but they also didn't like the other options because they weren't good enough. So our focus was on creating those options and making them good enough. So increasing the quality of public transport, reliability by protecting the lanes, increasing the quality of cycling by giving protected lanes, parking, etc. Bicycling is just like cars. Think of bicycles as very small cars. They both need a parking spot at the beginning and at the end. They both need a travel lane to protect themselves in, and they both need signals, right? But bicycles are much smaller, and so we can fit 10 more bicycles for the space of a car. So these are the kind of the value propositions that we're giving the community, saying, we hear you want a much more safer, sustainable, more attractive way to get around the city. We hear you worried about your own public health and sedentary life, all those issues. Here are choices that can actually help you get there, but you make that choice.
Here's how the city of San Francisco is managing to support cycling.
Normalizing bicycling for everyday transportation is only done when you have the facilities and the infrastructure in place. You need the bike lanes, you need the bike parking. You also need those visual cues that it's actually safe enough for mothers, for grandmothers with young children to feel safe to cycle. Women are the indicator species for these kinds of programs. So if there are women cycling, we see more people it becoming more normal because there's issues with their high heels, with their skirts, with their dresses, etc. And so we started to partner much more with our advocacy group to normalize cycling. So initially we had the middle-aged men in lycra, as they call them, the mammals, right? So that was the big group because they're a sporting cycling group and a long-distance cycling group. But then for everyday transportation, we found that cycling was much more convenient than getting in a car, getting out of the parking spot, driving not even half a kilometre, finding a parking spot, putting it in parking and then going and walking. If you had a bicycle that was easy to use, you don't have to use all this cycling gear. This is my cycling outfit, it's my own clothes. I just hop on the bike, ride exactly to where I want to go in that half or 1 kilometre, park it right there in front of the shop, and then walk into the shop, right? So we made that story of point-to-point convenience. And of course, it's not going to work on a 30-kilometre trip all the time, but most trips that we've found in cities are less than 3 kilometres. That's perfect for cycling. But you need the infrastructure to make it work.
A voice in Africa came from the University of Kampala.
I think the local context is very important. We should not look at our solutions as very foreign and we want to implement them the way we have imported them. We need to look at solutions that work within our context, how our people behave, the movement patterns. For example, our urban planning in most of our cities is such that people stay very far from where they work. So how are we going to provide for eco-mobility if people have to ride for 20 kilometers morning and 20 kilometers in the evening? However interested they may be in eco-mobility, riding 40 kilometers per day is not going to be very attractive. So local circumstances matter. That means that we have to look at the bigger picture and reorganize our cities and have compact cities that people can access services, facilities with ease. But you're not going to start copying the Netherlands and you want to paste immediately the way you have copied it or the way you have imported it, and you bring it in the African perspective. The other thing that I hear being hyped about is funding, that it holds implementation. But I think this is a matter of prioritization. If the funding that is available can be well shared, this is appropriate sharing, whereby the majority have to also be taken into consideration. If people are walking, why is more funding available for cars, for highways, and there is no funding for pedestrian facilities or cycleways? So it's about prioritization anyway. So implementation can be addressed from different perspectives: local context, prioritization, funding, and having a fair share of the budget.
Nashina Mohammed for Joburg Today.
Modern-day electrical cars.
The Association of Electrical Municipality Undertakings of Southern Africa hosted its centenary convention at the Sandton Convention Centre in Johannesburg. The convention is guided by a program that promises to address the pertinent issues facing the electricity sector in South Africa.
The focus then of the conference and maybe some of the topical issues will be around how do we as municipalities and as an industry start participating or actually driving the renewable energy sources within the country. But also what is also important is that how do we then get to get the customers to start engaging or probably relating differently when it comes to them now participating in a solar PV, for instance, and be able to fit back into the grid. And I think what is probably an important aspect of the conference is that we'll be getting technical presentations from the experts where they've either experienced this throughout the continent, and therefore it's not really something that is theoretical, but what the case studies that are out there throughout the continent. And I think it will go a long way in assisting both metros within the South African context, but also some of the small municipalities, I think, in the country, to make sure that we start really dealing with the issue of the security of supply, but we also start dealing with the issue of getting the renewable energies into the system, and therefore by assisting the country in terms of the security of supply and load shedding that we're currently faced with.
In Johannesburg, infrastructural challenges is one of the issues that have to be dealt with.
For us as cities, the key issues that we have to deal with regards to electricity relate to transmission lines, ensuring that we're able to get electricity distributed in our system. And in many ways, we've had to invest extensively as the city of Johannesburg in ensuring reliability of those lines, because it's not just that you face outages as a result of load shedding. Sometimes the load shedding are as a result of aging municipal infrastructure. And it's important that we as municipalities invest extensively in recapitalizing the aging infrastructure, which we've been focusing on as the city of Johannesburg. But it's also about the relationship that we build with our communities, particularly from the point of view of understanding how you can optimally utilize your electricity. We're introducing alternative mechanisms of charging, for example, so that you can have a time of use charge where people during off-peak are charged lesser amounts. And people then have the opportunity to flat out the way in which they themselves utilize their electricity. So you'd shift some of your load in the house to off-peak so that you pay less. And those are decisions households should be able to make. But that's on the basis of people understanding that in fact there are now time of use charges and these alternatives.
Following the power crisis in the country and the high electricity costs associated with it, local municipalities are encouraging the use of prepaid meters, which is a viable option that can allow you to monitor the amount of electricity you use and also the costs associated with that.
There will always be a requirement for meters. We're supplying not only in South Africa, also outside South Africa. Where, as you know, I don't know if you've seen a map of Africa where it was taken on satellite. They took a map of the world and they showed that Africa is still a dark continent. And that represents a lot of opportunities in terms of metering. So now, ESCOM, municipalities, there's a big drive for electrification. I think our government cannot rest until most of our people are electrified. It really saddens me. I'm from a very rural area in the north of Pretoria. I'm 44 years old now. I grew up in that area. When I was 6 years, I left the place. I went there. There was a funeral this year in April. Still, people don't have electricity, don't have water. So now, the poverty in our country is still very high. I believe our government needs to really work hard to electrify people. And that, for my company, represents a lot of opportunities for meters.
The conference attracted more than 6,000 delegates and key stakeholders. Schneider Electric Southern Africa hopes to gain more traction in the local market by getting municipalities to invest in their solar street lights.
The solar street lights basically is quite a new concept. It's been on the market for the last 10 years, no more than that. So it's the market is not mature yet, but it's coming to maturity. With Schneider Electric, we provide some very good quality solar street lights, and we are able to reach some clients such as the Association of Municipalities in Southern Africa, which are one of our main targets in South Africa. Basically, solar street light is made of solar power, so it's very interesting in South Africa, especially because, you know, we have some issues with load shedding sometimes. So if we could just get some off-grid power, it could be, it's always better.
In South Africa, the theft of electricity is of huge concern. It costs the economy billions each year.
There are two ways of stealing power. It's what we call the illegal connection, where the person will break into the box and connect into the circuitry thereof and then run cables illegally underground, across the ground, above the ground and whatever, and tap in and tap into and supply that electricity to housing at free of charge. At the end of the day, we're paying for it at the end of the day. I think anything that is taken away from it will cause increases in rates and that type of thing from the majors, the municipalities or ESCOM or that type of thing, because you've got to recoup your costs somewhere. Ideally, what we are doing at the conference is being able to show our customers, the municipalities as such, the solutions that we have relative to looking after and protecting obviously the theft of electricity.
Nashina Mohammed for Joburg Today.